It's Shirley.
It's Esther.
And this is the Move with Power podcast. All right. Welcome, Albert, to the podcast. We're super excited to have you and to learn about your startup, VectorShift, as well as your whole career journey. So before we go further, would you like to just introduce yourself and your startup?
Absolutely. And first of all, it's great to be here, and thank you for having me on. A little bit about VectorShift and a little bit about myself. So VectorShift is an AI automations platform. What we're solving is, what we realize is there's a lot of ways that AI can be employed in enterprises, and it's very difficult to code all of them up for any organization. So what we are at VectorShift is we're a no-code platform that boils down the core components of AI and utilizing AI in business settings so that even non-technical people can build these automations throughout the business. And happy to go into more case studies and examples in this call. But even for technical people, we do all the legwork of providing all the integrations for you, connecting to the right vector databases. These components are still very valuable to technical people to put together these automations because it saves them a lot of time. A little bit about myself. I graduated from Harvard in 21, studied statistics and computer science, was at McKinsey for 2 years. Really enjoyed my time in consulting and pivoted out of McKinsey when we got into Y Combinator. And that was a crazy experience. Quit my job the Friday before Y Combinator, and I was moving into my San Francisco house on Monday. But happy to go into more about that as well.
That's awesome. It sounds like your startup, even though it's only been less than a year, it's really launched full blown. Let's start there on the actual startup and the whole offering that you're bringing. So can you walk us through a little bit about how you see AI being a tool for enterprises and how you see yourself kind of solving that problem and the specific use cases that you had mentioned?
Absolutely. So, we're working, for example, for like a professional services firm in the United States that primarily services the government on a few different use cases. So one is to help them search through contracts, and second is actually to help them automate their reports and the proposals that they submit to the government. So if you can imagine, like, for each of these use cases, if you didn't have kind of a no-code platform like us, or a deployment platform, it could be very challenging to build these solutions. Take the search platform, for example, right? We built a system that live syncs to their OneDrive, live syncs to their CRM, and live syncs to all their data across their entire company, unifies it into a universal data schema, and does all the pre-processing of data and leverages the models in the right way. That's thoroughly tested and fine-tuned, to their specific use case, to be able to answer questions when they have a very broad question, say, how sales been, in the last month. We're able to find the right data in the company, process it, and go through many large language models to be able to produce the right output. And it's not just building these pipelines, as we call them, that's challenging, but it's also maintaining them. If you were to build this in-house, you would need a whole team to do this. And there's oftentimes regressions, models are not deterministic, right? You have to constantly test, you have to constantly monitor the performance. So that's kind of what we offer, for our enterprise clients. We give them the core components to actually do them. We help them find the use cases, and we monitor the performance throughout the life cycle. That's our enterprise use case. We also have kind of a self-serve motion that many startups or even mid or large companies use, and they can actually access the same core components right through our platform at VectorShift.ai.
And can you talk a little bit about how you were inspired to solve this problem in particular? What was the origin story of VectorShift?
So me and my co-founder, we ran a business together at Harvard previously. That when we were like 19, 20 years old, we grew this business to a few million in revenue. It was a consulting business. He was the CEO. I ran the sales team. And it was a lot of this type of work that we realized was really challenging and took up so much time. I'll give you 3 examples. One was writing personalized emails to outreach to clients. Second, taking all the pitch call data, we need to put the data into the CRM, right? Or it's going to be a massive issue if you don't have all the data really well organized. Then we have to go write the proposals. Similar to McKinsey, you have to write these pitches to clients, or in banking, we did that a lot too. That could be easily automated by taking the call recording, creating a pipeline on all your proposals, and figuring out how to actually craft these proposals. This is actually how I write my proposals today, through a pipeline at VectorShift, to actually trying to figure out simple questions to how the business is doing, because the data is everywhere in a company. And we weren't even that big, back then. And this was even a problem we saw even larger myself when I was at McKinsey, when I was dealing with, billion-dollar organizations and data just so scattered. How can we unify that to do natural language queries to get simple questions answered, right? It was very challenging. I was staying up very late, every night doing spreadsheets to piece this together. And this is something I think will get much better, through AI. So I think there's a lot of these experiences that contributed to it. But I think, I think I'm personally pretty passionate about democratizing AI and giving people access to be able to build applications themselves. I think that's also a motivating driver.
Yeah, it sounds like it's a tool that the user can really customize and tailor to exactly what they need. It sounds like you're not building something that's just for one industry and for one particular use case of translating, let's say, reports into an email, but you're providing the tools for them to be able to tailor.
Absolutely. Yeah, we want to provide the core components to be able to build whatever application yourself. We want to be able to provide that flexibility. We design our platform to be as flexible as possible to be able to take into account, these use cases. But, like many of our enterprise customers, we act kind of in a kind of more managed services basis, and, we manage and build, with our own pool, the solutions for the clients as well.
And are you the sole founder of the company, or do you have co-founders as well?
Yeah, so I have one co-founder, one of my best friends from college. We actually ran the previous business together, and yeah, so yeah, we dropped out of our jobs together, before starting VectorShift. I actually had on the same day.
Oh wow! And do you guys have anyone else on your team, or is it just the two of you guys right now?
Yeah, so we've hired engineers here in the U.S. So we actually just opened our New York City office here in FiDi. So we have a team of 5 in the U.S. and we're building kind of a team out overseas to work well together with our onshore team. So we're hiring is still something in progress, but yeah, that's something where I've learned a lot about how to actually construct and build a team over the last 6 months.
Now that we have an understanding of your team and what the product does, can you walk us through the journey of actually launching your startup from the day that you conceived of this idea all the way to now getting close to funding?
Absolutely. So, it was around 1 year ago actually, where I really honestly, I really did not like being in a corporate job. Really frankly, I wasn't learning anything anymore and wanted to go to a place where I wasn't encumbered and I just kept growing and learning. I was, thinking of, leaving, and not actually to start up, but I received a few offers to be a product manager because I wanted to learn how to build software. I thought that was going to be where I could learn something that I didn't know. Looking back, I think that was a little bit hasty, and I'm not sure if I would have made a good product manager, but ended up also trying to start up. And one day I remember giving a call to my co-founder. I'm like, hey, do you want to try this out? And it seemed like he was thinking about doing the same thing too. And that's, we started every weekend. I'll finish work on Friday, and on Saturday I would head over to his house and we would spend the time in the living room and think about how to actually do this. So we came up with this idea that we're working on now, but afterwards, we both took a week of PTO and just figured out how to build and how to get initial customers. And that was a crazy week. We worked our tails off. I landed a ton of calls and had some commitments. But yeah, like with that 1 week, we applied to Y Combinator and we ended up getting in. And it was, I remember getting the call from our partner, and it was, like a Friday, and they were like, you have to be in San Francisco in 2 weeks. And I had still a lease, I had all my furniture, I had everything in New York. So I had to pick myself up and move myself to San Francisco within 2 weeks and find an apartment and everything. So that's kind of the initial founding story. But during the batch, like it was a lot of like experimenting and learning. Like it was a lot of doing the wrong things and learning from mistakes. Like it was very difficult to get sales. I had to sell a product basically that didn't exist. And that took a lot of calls and a lot of learning on how to do that. Probably was the toughest time, honestly, of my life, but it was a great learning experience. And yeah, we ended up being able to raise, a $3 million funding, a seed funding round on top of the Y Combinator money at the end of the batch. And yeah, we've been laser focused, on building product over the last 3 months. Where I focus on.
First of all, like, congratulations. It's so exciting.
So thank you.
And also, so you mentioned, figuring out what to focus on. On the one hand, you have the product, which you're still actively building. On the other side, you're also gathering customers in your pipeline. How do you currently manage your time, and how do you think about goals or like key KPIs for your company in its first year?
I think it's always challenging because there's always more work to be done at any given moment that any human could possibly do. And it's not like we're a large company, so we can't hire everyone to do everything, So that's like always on my mind. And I think the flip side of that coin is, like because there's so much work, it's also difficult to actually sometimes miss the big picture because you're always just thinking and trying to make it to the next week and all the commitments that you have on a weekly basis, right? But at the end of the day, all we care about is growth, right? And we need to build something people want, and that's how we're going to achieve the growth, right? And a lot of what we'll be doing is, we had our initial design partners, we have initial people who have purchased our platform. We spend a lot of time, listening to them. Now, a lot of what we've built is kind of implementing the feedback that they've had, and studying products in the market and studying where we think the industry is going and building that into our product. But a lot of it, I think, is going to come next month when we launch, and we're going to have a huge, like a huge influx of users to be able to kind of learn and study from. But yeah, so I think that's always changing and always in flux. So I think it's kind of a day-by-day thing.
And speaking of products, have you guys thought about, what aspects would differentiate you guys from the other big data reading, like AI company? Like what stands out?
There's a few axes that we need to win on. So one is we need to be a platform where when you build an automation through us is faster and more performant than you can even, like a regular engineer could just build themselves, right? We need to have more uptime. We need to basically perform all of these like stats, right? And a lot of our work has been to build the infrastructure to be able to, allow for that. But I think the second biggest axis where I think we're actually quite different than a lot of our competitors is we're not a point solution. We have many different product lines that we think synergize really well together. So for example, at the top is we have our no code builder, and we have an SDK, like a Python software development kit version of that. These two interfaces, and there's interoperability between the two. So you could code something in SDK, it automatically appear in no code within our platform, and vice versa. And you could leverage the same capabilities through these two interfaces. But we have designed a whole host of solutions around these interfaces, from dozens of integrations with your data to dozens of automations, such as triggers to actions that you can perform, such as write into a database, modify data into a database, take data from one area, move it to somewhere else, right? We've basically built dozens of these pipelines that we think are very commonly used. And, we have an engineer who solely focuses on expanding kind of the functionality, there, to building, we strive to be, in the future, the #1 search and data retrieval player, to be able to feed the right data, to a large language model, to, other solutions that, we have from monitoring, to evaluations like prompt and pipeline evaluations, to, chatbot and front end creators. We want to be this kind of end-to-end platform where there might be solutions that I think tackle different pieces of this, but if we could build the most performant and the broadest platform, we want to be that's the only way to be kind of de facto place where people want to build applications and automations through us instead of coding it themselves, right?
When you talk to customers, I mean, as a B2B business, what do you see as the factors that really kind of like sell your product to them? And what are the features that they're kind of like, like, I'm not sure how this might fit into my organization?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's quite different based on, obviously the different customers that we have. Like, for example, a lot of our startups, who use us, they care much more about, our front end builder and, care a lot about our, no code interface and integrating with their data and doing these automations. But a lot of our more enterprise customers care more about, security, privacy, to kind of our enterprise grade search, to automate, I would say more, complex workflows around, report generation where much more data is involved. So I think, different types of customers have different use cases and they use different parts of our platform. So, like very few of our startups use our enterprise grade search, for example. But yeah, I think the commonality is I think many people like kind of, the interfaces that we have, whether it's like a no code interface or whether it's a pipeline run interface so that non-technical stakeholders can actually use our platform and automate workflows within themselves as well.
In terms of your team as well, I think now that we have a pretty good understanding of how your product functions, how do you build a team from scratch? Can you walk us through that, like in terms of not just knowing who is the right talent to hire, but then also how do you cultivate that kind of culture? What does it look like today, in what, month 6, month 7?
One startup that I really look up to is another WISE company called PostHog. Right? They're a few batches ahead of us. They're like a event recording observability platform. And the CEO said, if you hire correctly, all your problems go away. And there's never like, it's definitely like the most true thing. And I spent all my October hiring. It was like the only thing I did. I did it for like 12 hours a day, like interviews back to back to back, to like reaching out to candidates, to like reviewing resumes. It was my whole day, for a whole month. Probably even more, honestly. And I think what you're looking for as a startup, when you're making your first few hires, is you're looking for things, you're doing things that don't scale, just like Paul Graham said, just like how building a product, right? You're not looking to create like a scalable process where you're like only looking for like Harvard people or like top schools. You're not like that would put you in the wrong boat for sure. You need to find like the one-off talent that's like overlooked by everyone else, that's undervalued by the market, but that they can be like killers. So we turn over all stones to try and find those people. Because to be very frank, like the people who are, I would say more pricely valued by the market, say they went to a really great school, they're not going to want to join an early stage startup. And like, they probably wouldn't do as well in this kind of environment where, our vision might change, every 3 months, right? So what we're looking for? I think we're looking for, I say, people who know how to ship really fast, have been in maybe startup environments. It's not just that they can answer the coding question or the architecture question, the mathematical proof, but like they need to be able to ship the product really, really fast. And like we looked for primarily young people because, we're looking for people who, as we said, like are undervalued and, we think can grow, with the company. And we're looking for people who can like learn really fast. Like they don't have to be the superstar today, but like we think can be really great in the future. And obviously they have to have, basic cultural fits. Like they have to have low ego. They have high ownership and care a lot about what they do, and they love what they do. So there's a lot of these factors that we look for, and that's definitely not easy, hiring. That was probably one of the biggest things I had to learn last year.
Once you kind of have all these people in the room, how do you maintain that team culture, right? Because you spoke about earlier how intense the work schedule is and how you have so many priorities going on at once.
Yeah.
How do you keep everyone energized?
Yeah.
And are there active things that you do, or do you kind of see what people bring with them, their personalities, and how people gel together?
Personally speaking, I genuinely care about everyone enjoying coming to work, Well, on your kind of workload part, right? We told all the engineers coming on that this is not, a 9-to-5 job, and there were many people who were not okay with that. I think it's 100% great, important to make it clear this is kind of the expectation, right? But above that, I care a lot about people doing and enjoying part of their work, because people spend, even if it's a 9-to-5 job, that's a substantial part of your week at work, right? I don't want to waste people's time. So I check in with everyone to make sure that, just simply asking whether or not they are enjoying kind of what they're doing. I'm generally curious kind of what people are interested in and how we can best align, our company projects with what people want to do. But, I think we hired really for people who I think want to tackle really difficult things. And I think it's really I think for those people, actually, I think working at VectorShift is actually very stimulating, for them. So, there's definitely sprints where it's rough, but we balance it with a lot of fun too. We had a retreat in Boston around Thanksgiving as well. We after we do this big push, we'll do some time off, together as a team. But we try to do some fun things as well. But a lot of the time is we look for people who enjoy kind of working and enjoy kind of producing really great results.
So when you're hiring people, are you kind of looking for people who can pretty much do anything? Because I know that at the startup, the roles are not very clearly defined. Everyone has to sort of hustle. How do you manage that? And how do you, design sort of roles for the different people based on their, strengths and weaknesses?
Yeah. So, at the end of the day, we looked for people who we think can learn really fast, right? We brought on an engineer who's never really coded in a practical setting. We have engineers who, as I mentioned, can ship really fast even before, that we thought were amazing. But for example, one of our engineers barely spent any time coding. We loved him because we thought he had really high learning capability. And he does. And that's kind of why, we sometimes tell him, and he's interested in learning, go, you have to learn this new skill, this new language, come back in 2 days and please learn it, because we need, it's a lot of support here in 3 days. So please help, but I think, I think as long as we find people with high slope and high ability to learn, a lot of those problems go away. And as you said, there's a lot of random issues that happen from a technical side of things. That's not just any software would know from day one. And also the AI space is moving so fast that no one's going to know what's going to look like in 5 years, right, today. So we need people who can learn fast and, be able to adapt to new things, basically.
So you spoke a lot about, the fact that you really care for the team, and we would love to understand more kind of the Albert behind the scenes and how, your journey up until now. So just shifting gears a little bit, we'd love to kind of hear about, your experience in school or even prior to now. What were some of the kind of key moments that you think have shaped how and who you are today and now being a founder?
I always had, I think, this mindset of I want to personally make things better. I want to make things better after I left, right? That's not just with clients in McKinsey, but also, my analyst class in McKinsey, to, my, group that me and my co-founder ran in college, to different clubs I ran in high school. I wanted things to be better after I left. I think that was really why I went to startups at the end of the day. I met a lot of really great founders last summer, And a lot of the people I now, like after meeting them, really admire is people who, really wanted to make a difference in the world. And, that's not an easy thing to do, but they worked at it every day, for a long period of time. And, that's kind of, I think, what motivates me.
Yeah, and I think me and Shirley, we interviewed previous, founders, co-founders before, and we found that people who have their own startups are extremely motivated, and they have, the tenacity, and the persistence to just build something. It's very different from the other people that we interviewed. I would say, I think they understand what they're doing, and then they have a way to regulate not just emotion but also physical well-beings. It's like I was really impressed.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I mean, I think there's many people I look up to who are much better at me than this, and a lot of times, why I think startups really cool is because you look at some of the really, I think, preeminent startup founders, they're at a much higher level than me. When you read about them, when I met them this summer, and yeah, it's like I think quite motivating, just like how much I need to learn. So that's I think that's a good point.
What were some of the like most inspirational things that you learned from them and how they operate?
Yeah. So, for example, like I think a lot of these founders, like even the CEO of Stripe, the CEO of Rippling, like you can tell they've like been through a lot, to bring their company from 0 to like 100 billion.
Yeah.
In the case of Stripe, and like just multiple billion, right? They've like gone through like hell, and like you can tell but they've just have this sense that like nothing can like face them anymore. Like I used to, like I look back at my time, like like back then when I was at McKinsey, I used to get stressed about like a deck not getting done,
Yeah.
like or like now, and even last summer, I was stressed about like not making a sale. Like this CEO of Airbnb was like the whole company was about to die during COVID when no one was going into Airbnbs, when like the whole world shut down during COVID. Like he had to go solve that problem. So and then when you go through that, you realize that like there's, I think, different scales of, I think, challenges and like different things, like, and they mature a lot from that, but also, like the less things face them and they're able to achieve even more after accomplishing that because they're able to approach things more rationally with more experience. Yeah, like, I think I really admire, those people, and, I hope I'm one of those, one day.
Yeah, it's a true like trial by fire, right? Because
Yeah.
you're just put through the ringer enough times and
Yeah.
okay, I've seen this before. I know exactly what went wrong last time and how to tackle it this time.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah, I feel like you have to be extremely intrinsically motivated to like go through all these moments, or else you can just, you can choose to just give up like at any
Yeah.
time, but then you just like persist on. Like I'm curious, in McKinsey and in banking, there's always deadlines to submit some PowerPoint or go to these meetings. Like how do you set that kind of deadlines for yourself when you're working at your startup? Because you basically have unlimited time to work on whatever you want to work on. Like how do you prioritize tasks and assign tasks?
Yeah. I mean, I've learned a lot about setting deadlines even from our previous running previous business. My philosophy is I always set deadlines that like really scare everyone. What we're fighting here is not, a deadline that's like imposed by a client, but like, if we don't move fast, we're actually going to run out of money, and like it's more of like how fast can we go in this period of time and how much can we get done. And sometimes we hit the deadline, sometimes we don't, but like, I think with startups, there's just so much to do that it's always good to have at least some buffer time and, to get stuff done if at possible, like ahead of schedule. That's, I think, always my philosophy.
And do you think that, and I think about this a lot because I feel like a lot of my job at McKinsey is planning.
Mhm.
Do you feel like there are transferable skills from your time here that you actually use in structuring your business and maintaining those timelines?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's always helpful to have that. I think what's been most helpful from McKinsey is actually how to deal with clients. And because we have a lot of enterprise clients too, and we're helping them, increase efficiency with AI and like how to actually create a project, around this, how to actually track results, to how to actually get every stakeholder on board, to how to work with many different client teams. That's been, I think, by far most incredibly helpful thing I learned at McKinsey. I think the planning stuff, I think it's helpful. I think there's a lot, not actually a ton of planning, it's just more like just pure execution, at least at my stage, where there's just so much to do every day. And like, like I think I plan a little bit, but then, obviously majority of the time, we got to just do stuff.
Out of curiosity, how did you come up with your like business model?
Well, we started with this enterprise. I mean, a lot of this, I saw how partners sold at McKinsey. It's actually quite kind of similar, honestly, how we price things. And, a lot of times we price on value, we figure out how much we actually can save people, and, we price it based on that, right? But, we're actually moving towards more, like our focus for the next few months is bottom up, like startups using our platform. And like, to be really honest, I don't actually know like if this is the right pricing methodology. And like, quite frankly, I don't think many startups know early on if they have the right pricing methodology. I think that's going to be something that we're going to have to iterate on, really frankly. But at the end of the day, we wanted, I think a philosophy of ours is we really wanted to have a really robust free tier for our startup users, in the sense, we looked at, I think, a lot of companies that we admire that had product growth, like Post-Hog, like Stripe. They have really robust free tiers that people can use and really love their product. And that's our goal. Like, we want to build something people want, not to just like charge money that we don't deserve.
And it sounded really stressful. Like, how did you manage that, that kind of stress? Like, how did you maintain your composure? And, did that sort of chaos affected your mental health at all?
Well, yeah, I mean, really candidly, I mean, I had a pretty tough summer. Like, it was the hardest I've ever worked in my life. But, at the end of the day, like, it was crazy because we had this like timer, like YC gives you this timer, right? And it counts down until like you need to talk to investors. So we had nothing on day, like YC is like 80 days. I forgot the exact number, but it's around 80 days. We still had nothing, I think, around day 65, because we were moving in. There's also like a retreat at the very beginning, so you have fun, and then you go back. It's like 65 days, and then you start probably raising money before then. So you have about 50 days to build something and like sell it out the door. And like every day I had this like count, had this like it ticks down like by the second. And yeah, it was really stressful, like really frankly. Like I track my sleep and everything. Like, it was the least I've ever slept. Like, my sleep quality was shit. Like, I put on 20 pounds during YC. Like, I was like not healthy. I was eating microwave meals. There was just no time. Every minute of the day was how to get more sales for 50 days straight. And like, I think that's what it took. That's what it took, I think, to like find the escape velocity that any startup needs to get it off the ground. And like, now I think we're in a better rhythm. It's not like we have everything. We're far from having everything figured out, right? But like, at least we're in a rhythm. At least we know what to build. At least like we're heading in the right in a direction. Like, we still have to validate this is the right direction, right? But now I think we're more in a rhythm. But I think, yeah, like really frankly, it was pretty tough, in the YC batch. And like, if you ask anyone, like, that's probably what they would say.
And you just got through it with like pure grind.
Yeah, every day. Like, I was on the West Coast. Like, I had European clients. I was waking up at 4 a.m. because the time difference was like 9 hours. Like, most days I was up, and I was like sleeping late because I had so much work to do after all the calls. So yeah, it was like, you just had to, we just worked. And my co-founder coded for 50 days straight, and we shipped the product out the door.
And you had to have a working product by the end of that period.
Well, I mean, like, at the end of the day, there's many ways to raise money, right? There's people who raise money without anything, right? But I think, for us, we're young founders. We've never done this before. We're young, and, probably you need traction, and you probably need a product built, right? So that's kind of what we were going for.
Before we jump into our final two questions that we asked all of our guests, what is your advice for other young aspiring founders?
You gotta first you gotta figure out whether or not you want a co-founder. And like, you should figure that out. For me, like I definitely, I think co-founder makes better sense for me because I think, I have a lot of weaknesses that my co-founder has strengths. And you realize this is like probably like very important because, I spend more time with my co-founder than my girlfriend because I work all the time and like, I'm at work. And like it's not like your job where it's like, you can change bosses, or like if you don't like your job, you like can just like go to another job, right? Like you are now stuck in the trenches, like with your co-founder, if you choose to have one, day in and day out. And like if you don't choose the right one, like there's no way your startup's gonna succeed. Not just from like a capability standpoint, but like all the startups that have failed so far in YC has just been the co-founder did not work out. And there were quite a few of those. And even though YC, I think, spent a lot of time and diligence in this, I don't fully realize how important that is until like now, where like if you don't have someone who like you think you can work well with, that complements you, that like, quite frankly, you don't get annoyed by. There's a lot of those that happen, or a lot of really big fights have happened. YC, and I knew these people, right? It's not going to work. Like, no, don't even get me wrong. Like, what product you're building, like how good you hired or anything. Like that's not there. So I would think really carefully. Like you're about to like devote a significant amount of time, right? I spend 7 days a week working, right? Like that's a lot of time. And like if you don't find the right co-founder, it's going to be like really miserable, and it's not going to work for sure.
Awesome. So our typical 2 questions that we ask all of our guests are first, who is a power move inspiration to you? Now, this can be anyone who's close to you or just an inspiration.
Yeah, I really admire, like the Rippling founder. Rippling is like a HR, finance, like IT, management software. Park Conrad is the CEO. And the reason why is because among anyone I know, I think he's overcome probably the most in the sense, he first did a startup for like 7 years that like didn't work, and then, went to another startup, like grew it a lot, and then like that didn't work. He got like betrayed by his like one of his executives, and that's why like the startup went from a few $1 billion down back to zero. So you can imagine like 10 years in, you still have nothing. Like, you're like mid-30s to late 30s, you have nothing. He had literally nothing. Like, but he was like so close, and now he's on his like 4th or 5th company, and like finally I think they have a really great product. I loved using their product, and like I think it took a lot, like to be able to do it again, like all these times. And like when you talk to him, like I've heard him talk at like YC speaking session, like you can tell like he's been through a lot, and like now like literally nothing can phase him. And like I think he's trying to build something that's like truly big, truly gonna make a difference. And like I think the people who like are able to do that, honestly, that can build something that impactful, like I think went through a lot, and they're able to take a lot of shit, and they're able to do that. So I think I'm ready for him, and I hope they go public in the next couple of years, and that he not only, I mean, does really well for himself, but like creates a big company that changes the world.
Yeah. I think people often just want to succeed, but they don't realize how many times you have to fail in order to, get to that. So
Absolutely.
very respectable. And another question we have, we always ask is, our podcast is Move with Power. So what does Move with Power mean to you?
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, what I think moving power is like, I think every day it's like if you're not like at least somewhat scared, or like like you are scared to like do what you have to do that day, I don't think you're like pushing yourself hard enough. Like I think the stuff that made me scared 2 years ago like would not faze me at all today. I'm sure like what will make me scared like 2 years from now, like when I look back today, it would be like nothing, But I think that's the best way to grow. Like I think you have to like really push yourself, and like I don't think there's like any way around it. Like you have to like do what it takes and work really hard. And it's not just working hard, but like you have to like push through a lot of different things, right? So I think that's what Move with Power means to me.
Thank you for tuning in another episode of the Move with Power podcast.
Don't forget to follow us on Spotify, check out our Patreon, and join our growing base of Power Move members via our website in the description box. Until next time, remember to move with power.